My parents drained my daughter's education account to fund my nephew's private school. Mom said, "He has more potential." My sister smirked. My daughter said nothing. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I did this. By the next day, their phones wouldn't stop ringing. The moment my mother said it, the room went completely quiet. He has more potential. He didn't hesitate. She didn't even look uncomfortable saying it. She said it the way someone might comment on the weather. My nephew Ryan was sitting at the kitchen table scrolling through his phone. My sister Claire stood behind him with a small smile on her face, arms folded like she had just won something. Across from them sat my daughter Lily. She didn't say a word. She just stared at the table. And that silence was worse than anything they could have said. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't even reacted yet. Because 5 minutes earlier I had just learned something that made my hands feel numb. My parents had emptied Lily's college fund. Not a little. Not a loan. Every dollar. The account had been opened when Lily was born. My parents insisted on managing it because my dad used to work at a bank and claimed he knew how to invest it better. Every birthday and holiday money went into that account. Mine, theirs, relatives, everyone. 16 years of deposits. Gone. I found out by accident. Lily and I were meeting with a college advisor that morning. When I logged in to check the balance, the number staring back at me was 0. At first I thought it was a mistake. Then I called the bank. Then I drove straight to my parents' house. And that was when my mother calmly explained where the money went. Ryan's private school. Tuition had gone up. My sister couldn't afford it anymore. My parents stepped in to help, using Lily's fund. When I asked how they could possibly think that was okay, my mom just shrugged. Lily is smart. She will get scholarships. Claire laughed a little under her breath. Ryan finally looked up from his phone. I do need it more. That was when my daughter finally looked up from the table. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She just nodded once. That almost broke me. Ryan was 14 and already had 2 suspensions for cheating and 1 for stealing a teacher's tablet. Last year he lied about a classmate bullying him, which turned into a whole investigation before the truth came out. But according to my parents, he had more potential. My dad finally spoke. "You're overreacting, Isabella. It's family money." I asked one question. "Did you ask Lily?" Silence. My mom waved her hand. "She's a child." That was when Claire smirked. I still remember that exact moment because something inside me clicked. Not anger exactly. Something colder. I stood up. Lily stood up too. My parents looked relieved, like the argument was over and I had accepted it. I said one thing before we left. "You're right. It is family money." My mom nodded like she had won. But what she didn't know was that I had spent the entire drive over reading the transaction history. And the problem with stealing money from a fund legally registered in a minor's name is that it creates a very interesting paper trail. By the time Lily and I got home, I had already made 3 phone calls. The first one was to the bank. The second was to a lawyer. And the third one was to someone my parents definitely did not expect. The next morning their phones started ringing. And they didn't stop. By 9 the next morning my parents had already called me 6 times. I didn't answer. Lily was at school and I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Claire. I let it ring. Another buzz. A voicemail. Another buzz. My dad. I ignored that one too. The call started right after 8, which meant the first call they received had probably come from the bank right when it opened. The second call would have come from the lawyer. The third one was the call I knew would really get their attention. At 9:12 my phone finally rang from a number I didn't recognize. I picked up. The voice on the other end introduced himself as Mr. Daniels from Ryan's private school. He sounded very careful with his words. Apparently the school had received a call that morning questioning the source of Ryan's tuition payments. More specifically, whether the money used belonged to a minor whose account had been emptied without consent. Private schools take their funding seriously. They especially take legal trouble seriously. I told him the truth. My daughter's education account was drained yesterday without her knowledge. There was a pause. He asked one more question. Is this currently being reviewed legally? Yes. Another pause. He thanked me and ended the call. About 5 minutes later Claire called again. This time I answered. What did you do? She asked immediately. I told the truth. You called Ryan's school? I answered a question. She started complaining about how I was overreacting and how the school was now asking questions about the tuition payment. Apparently, they had already contacted my parents asking for documentation showing the money had been transferred legally. Claire sounded more annoyed than worried. They're making this a big deal for no reason. I said nothing. She kept talking. You know Lily was going to get scholarships anyway. I hung up. Around noon my mother finally showed up at my house without calling. She knocked 3 times before I opened the door. She walked in like she owned the place. Isabella, this needs to stop. I asked her a simple question. Did you take the money from Lily's account? She looked irritated. We moved it. It's still helping the family. Lily is the family. My mom rolled her eyes. You're making Ryan look bad. Ryan had managed to get himself suspended again that afternoon. Apparently the school didn't like the situation around the tuition payment. While they reviewed it, they had temporarily frozen his enrollment status. Claire had called my mother screaming about it. My mom crossed her arms. If you don't fix this today, Ryan could lose his place at the school. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I told her the part she didn't know yet. I didn't start anything. The bank did. That finally made her face change. When someone withdraws a large amount of money from an account belonging to a minor, the bank automatically files a review. Normally it's routine, unless the person who made the withdrawal wasn't the legal owner of the funds. My dad had been listed as a manager of the account, but the beneficiary was Lily, and the money had been moved directly into a payment for Ryan's school. My lawyer had already requested the documentation. My mom stared at me. You're not serious. I am. Her phone rang again while we were standing there. She looked at the screen. The caller ID said the bank. She stepped outside to answer it. 10 minutes later she came back inside. She looked pale. Apparently the bank wanted a meeting. Not just a call. A meeting. And they also wanted Lily present. That was when my mother finally said something that almost made me laugh. This is going to make the family look bad. I looked at her. You should have thought about that before stealing from my kid. She opened her mouth like she was about to argue again. But before she could speak, my phone buzzed. This time it was Lily. Just one short message. Mom, something weird happened today. I called her immediately. She answered and said something I didn't expect at all. Ryan came to school today. I frowned. He doesn't go to your school. I know. But he was here. There was a pause. And he told everyone something about my college money. That was when I realized the situation was about to get a lot worse. Because Ryan had apparently decided to brag about it. When Lily told me Ryan had shown up at her school, my first thought was that she misunderstood something. Ryan went to a private academy across town. There was no reason for him to be anywhere near her public high school. Why was he there? I asked. I don't know, Lily said. He was in the parking lot when school ended. She paused. He was telling people something about the money. I felt my stomach tighten. What exactly did he say? That his grandparents moved my college fund to his school because he deserved it more. For a second I didn't say anything. Ryan had always been a kid who liked attention. But this was different. This wasn't just bragging. This was him repeating exactly what my parents had said the day before. My daughter continued. He said I didn't need the money because I'd probably just go to a regular college. I asked her where she was. In Emma's car. We were about to leave. Stay there, I said. I'm coming. It took me 15 minutes to get to the school. By the time I pulled into the parking lot, most of the students were already leaving. Lily was standing near the entrance with her backpack. Her friend Emma was next to her. Ryan was nowhere in sight. When Lily got into the car, she looked calm, but I could tell she had been thinking about it all afternoon. He was laughing about it, she said. With who? Some kids from his baseball team. They were picking him up. I nodded slowly. Ryan loved baseball. My parents paid for every camp, every coach, every tournament. They always said he was going to go far if people invested in him. Apparently that investment now included my daughter's future. As we drove home, Lily looked out the window. Then she said something that surprised me. I don't want the money back. I glanced at her. What do you mean? I mean, it's obvious they don't want it going to me. I pulled the car over before answering. Lily, that money is yours. He shrugged. They made their choice. I shook my head. No, they made a mistake. She didn't argue, but she didn't look convinced either. That evening my phone rang again. This time it was my dad. I let it ring twice before answering. Your mother told me what you did, he said. What part? Calling the bank. Calling the school. I didn't call the school. He ignored that. You're creating a problem that doesn't need to exist. I asked him something simple. Did you take Lily's money? There was a long pause. We invested it in the family. In Ryan. He has opportunities Lily doesn't. That sentence sat there for a moment. Then he added something that made my jaw tighten. You know as well as I do that Ryan could actually go somewhere with the right support. I ended the call. Because there was nothing useful left to say. Later that night my lawyer called. She had already reviewed the account records. There's something interesting here, she told me. What? The money wasn't transferred once. I sat up. What do you mean? It was withdrawn in pieces over the last 3 months. That stopped me. 3 months. That meant this wasn't a sudden decision. My parents had been draining Lily's account slowly, planning it the entire time. But that wasn't the part my lawyer found most interesting. The final payment to the school was larger than the remaining balance. I frowned. So where did the extra money come from? That's what I'm trying to figure out. She paused. There's another account involved. Whose? She exhaled slowly. Your daughter's name is connected to it. For a moment I didn't understand what she meant. Lily doesn't have another account. According to these records, she said, she does. My mind started racing. Because Lily had never opened another account. And I definitely hadn't, which meant someone else had. And the only people who had ever handled Lily's finances were my parents. Then my lawyer said the one sentence that made everything shift. Isabella, I think this situation is much bigger than just the college fund. And the next morning I found out just how big it really was. I met my lawyer the next morning. She already had documents waiting for me. There's another account in Lily's name, she said. I thought she meant the college fund. She shook her head. No, a second one. The account had been opened 4 years earlier. When Lily was 12. The adult managing it was my father. It was an investment account. Money had been deposited into it several times over the years. Large deposits. 10,000, 15,000, 8,000. Then I saw the withdrawals. Every large withdrawal had gone to the same place. Ryan's private school. I looked at Karen. So they didn't just take the college fund. No, she said. They've been using Lily's name for years. I felt sick. Then she pointed to the last page. There's something else. Another account connected to Lily had existed before. But that one had been closed last year. Where did the money go? I asked. Into a business account. Later that afternoon Lily and I walked into the bank meeting. My parents were already there. Claire was beside them. Ryan sat in a chair looking bored. The bank manager opened a folder. There are 3 accounts connected to Lily's name. My father immediately looked irritated. The manager continued. 1 education fund and 2 investment accounts. He flipped to another page. The second investment account was closed last year. I leaned forward. And the money? It was transferred into a business account. Claire frowned. What business? The manager checked the paperwork. Then he read the name. Ryan Carter. Ryan finally looked up from his phone. And suddenly everyone in the room realized something. My parents hadn't just taken Lily's future. They had used her name to build his. For a few seconds nobody spoke. Ryan was the first one to react. What business? He asked. The bank manager looked at the file. It appears to be a sports training company. Claire turned toward my parents. You started a business for him? My father cleared his throat. It's just something small. The manager continued reading. The account was opened under Ryan Carter, but the initial capital came from an investment account under Lily Carter. I looked straight at my dad. You used her money to start a company in his name. My mother tried to interrupt. It's still family money. The bank manager shook his head slightly. Not exactly. The funds were legally connected to Lily. Ryan looked confused. So what does that mean? Karen answered before anyone else could. It means the money used to start your business may not legally belong to you. Claire stared at my parents. You told me you paid for that. My father looked irritated. It was an investment for the family. I leaned back in my chair. For Ryan. Nobody argued with that. The manager flipped another page. There's another issue. My stomach tightened. The paperwork that allowed the account to be opened required Lily's consent. Lily looked up. I never agreed to anything. The manager adjusted his glasses. There is a signed form. He turned the document toward us. Lily leaned closer. Then she shook her head. I remember signing something for Grandpa. I looked at the signature. It was messy, but it clearly said Lily Carter. Karen spoke quietly. How old were you when you signed this? 12. Karen nodded. A minor cannot legally authorize financial transfers like this. The room went silent again. My mother looked nervous now. Are you saying this is illegal? Karen didn't rush her answer. I'm saying the bank will need to review it. Ryan suddenly looked worried. So what happens to my business? Karen answered calmly. If the money was improperly transferred, the ownership could be disputed. Ryan looked straight at my parents. You said it was mine. My dad didn't respond. Because for the first time since this started, he didn't have an explanation. But the real shock came a few minutes later when the bank manager opened the final document. One more thing. He looked at Lily. The remaining balance from the education fund has not disappeared. Everyone in the room turned toward him. What do you mean? I asked. He tapped the paper. The funds were frozen yesterday during the review. My mother leaned forward. But the money was already sent to the school. Yes, the manager said. But the transfer was flagged this morning. Ryan's tuition payment had just been reversed. And the next person Ryan's school was about to call was not my parents. It was Lily. The room stayed quiet after the bank manager said that. Ryan looked confused. What do you mean reversed? The manager answered simply. The payment to the school is currently under review. Until ownership of the funds is clarified, the bank has frozen the transfer. Claire turned to my parents. So the school didn't get the money? My father shifted in his chair. It's temporary. Karen spoke before he could say anything else. It may not be. Ryan finally understood what was happening. You're saying my tuition isn't paid? The manager nodded. Correct. Ryan stared at my parents. You said everything was handled. No one answered him. Then the manager continued. Since the funds belong to Lily, the bank must confirm whether she authorized their use. Everyone in the room looked at my daughter. Lily sat quietly for a moment. Then she said one sentence. I didn't. The manager made a note. Thank you. My mother leaned forward quickly. Lily, this is for your cousin. It helps the family. Lily looked at her. It was supposed to help me. That was the first time she had said anything emotional since this started. The meeting ended shortly after that. The bank began a full investigation into the accounts. The tuition payment to Ryan's school was canceled. 2 days later, the school called Claire. Without the payment, Ryan could not remain enrolled. Meanwhile, the bank confirmed something important. The education fund belonged entirely to Lily. Every dollar had to be returned. The money from the investment account that funded Ryan's business was also placed under legal review, which meant the company wasn't really his anymore. It technically belonged to Lily. My parents stopped calling after that week. Claire tried once. She said I had destroyed Ryan's future. I told her something simple. No. You tried to take Lily's. A month later, the bank finished restoring the accounts. Lily's college fund was back where it should have been. The business account was legally transferred to her name since the startup money came from her funds. Lily looked at the documents for a long time. Then she asked one question. What should I do with it? I told her the truth. It's yours. Decide what you want. A week later, she made her decision. She sold the business rights to a local sports center that wanted the program Ryan had started. The money went straight into her college account. Ryan lost the company. He also lost the private school. My parents never admitted they were wrong. But they never talked about potential again. Because the one person they underestimated the most was the quiet girl sitting at that kitchen table. And in the end, Lily was the only one whose future actually got funded.